Historical victories of the Kiev army greatly changed the course of the Ukrainian-Russian war. Extraordinary drone attacks by the Ukrainian Air Force have reduced the importance of ground operations. Russian leader Vladimir Putin and one of his top men, Kremlin spokesman Peskov, woke up this week with a nightmare. The ongoing war in Ukraine had begun to move into Russian territory. Russian airborne warning sirens were howling at Engels 2 and Dyagilevo airbase. The first airstrikes occurred at the airport in Russia's Engels region. In the early hours of the morning, an attack operation was carried out with kamikaze-type drones on the Engels 2 airport, 700 kilometers from the capital, Moscow. On the same date, Dyagilevo airbase was also targeted by these drones. In the first 2 days of the events, Russia's Engels 2 and Dyagilevo military airports were attacked 3 times in total. Satellite images showed that at least 4 Russian heavy bombers were damaged as a result of the attack on Russian military airfields. The news of this shock attack, which was urgently conveyed to the Moscow administration, greatly worried Vladimir Putin. However, a detail in the news of the attack turned the attention of the Moscow authorities to the Ukrainian side. According to the Kremlin, unmanned aerial vehicles with a range of up to 1,000 kilometers were used in the attacks that took place at 2 Russian air bases. At the same time, Russian authorities claimed, according to preliminary data, that the drones targeting the Engels and Dyagilevo air bases were of the Tu-141 type, a Soviet unmanned aerial vehicle that was deeply modernized and therefore could probably cover more than 600 kilometers. The Ukrainian military expanded their effective range by adding jet engines to Soviet-era drones, but the Kiev government did not take responsibility for the attacks on Russian air bases. The drones used in the attack were faster and more effective than ever before, but it has not yet been conclusively proven that the Ukrainian military carried out these attacks. In the satellite images, the Russian fighter squadron, including the Tu-22M3 backfire Russian heavy bomber and a Tu-95 MS Bear H, at these airports was severely damaged when the said drones hit the airport violently. In addition, the first satellite images obtained after the attacks included another detail that no one noticed. Yes, jet-powered and higher-range drones had rendered most of the Russian heavy bombers in Dyagilevo unusable, but satellite images revealed that 10 Russian bombers had disappeared from the Dyagilevo airbase. This stunning news leaked to the media after the drone attacks took place. Photographs from satellite images showed a significant decrease in the number of long-range and strategic bombers at the Dyagilevo airbase near Ryazan. It is known that at least one Tu-22M3 long-range bomber was damaged after the attack on Dyagilevo airport. However, it's not known what happened to the other Russian planes that were not included in the satellite images. A number of hypotheses suggest that the Russian bombers were moved to other military installations to avoid a second airstrike by the Ukrainian armed forces. Even now, Moscow authorities are thought to be afraid of possible drone attacks at the mentioned air bases. Therefore, in satellite images, the displacement of Russian bombers, their transport from these air bases, proves how severe and effective drone attacks are. The Russian administration, as we mentioned, put the whole responsibility of the attacks on Kiev, citing the jet-powered and higher-range unmanned aerial vehicles used in the attacks on the Engels and Dyagilevo air bases as evidence. Russia began to wait for Ukraine's statements about this event, but the Kiev authorities in no way admitted that they carried out these attacks. Even if the Russian assumptions are correct, the Ukrainian army has averted a critical danger, because Russia was going to use heavy bombers from Engels and Dyagilevo to set Ukraine's urban infrastructures and innocent civilians under fire. Drone attacks on this airport managed to thwart the targets of the Russian military, which broke the rules of war and recklessly targeted public spaces for a time. The main fear of the Kremlin and Putin at the moment was that the airstrikes would come to the forefront as the tactics of the war changed. In particular, the unmanned aerial vehicles in the inventory of the Ukrainian army began to be more effective in airstrikes than the operations organized by Russian heavy bombers. The Ukrainian army was now able to develop itself in every field, but the main issue that the war required at the moment was the attainment of dominance in airstrikes. Russia was quite successful in airstrikes at the beginning of the war. Moscow soldiers could carry out bombing attacks in many cities in Ukraine, especially in Kiev. But time passed, and Ukraine's allies put a stop to these aggressive policies of the Russians. In particular, the air defense systems allocated to the Kiev army by the U.S. government greatly reduced the impact of the attacks carried out by Russia in the skies of Ukraine. Even now, NASAM's air defense systems of American origin serve the Kiev soldiers with 100% performance. In addition, the Iris-Ts sent by Germany to Ukraine are performing their duties flawlessly, just like NASAM's. France, which supported the Ukrainian air defense systems with its latest aid package, sent its unique air defense system called Krotal to the Kiev army in response to possible air threats from Russia. Thanks to all these air defense systems, the Kiev army does not even fly toy planes to the Russians over the Ukrainian skies. Moscow, on the other hand, can only carry out harassment airstrikes on Ukraine due to all these measures. This policy followed by Russia is actually quite ineffective and is an unacceptable method according to international war norms. This tactic, which is customary for Russia, which is considered a war criminal, has so far cut thousands of innocent Ukrainians from their lives. But the Russian army no longer even has the ammunition to carry out these treacherous attacks. Thanks to the legendary operations, sudden raids, and counterattacks of the Ukrainian armed forces, Moscow's arsenal is on the verge of running out. Leader Vladimir Putin, on the other hand, did not have much alternative to make up for the shortcoming of the Moscow army. The Russian leader, who has approached Iran in the past months to strengthen his army's inventory, has no ally left to turn to for help right now. This desperate situation of Russia caused another shock claim to be made. Particularly, Kremlin spokesman Peskov's soft stance and his statements that evoked peace negotiations regarding the Ukraine-Russia war indicated that Moscow could now give up in this war. Russian President Vladimir Putin, like Peskov, now preferred a much more frugal and calm style. The advance of the Ukrainian army also stunned the Moscow administration. The Kiev soldiers, admired by all the countries of the world, had accomplished the impossible. Russia, which has the second army in the world, knelt before the army of Kiev, which was fighting against impossibilities and was far less in number than the Moscow army. This picture of shame humiliated Russia both diplomatically and militarily in the world political arena. The Russian people also broke their silence against the Moscow administration in the face of these crushing defeats. Hundreds of thousands of Russians began to think that the Ukrainian war was hurting their country. The fires of rebellion, which spreads in waves all over the streets of Russia, especially in Moscow Square every night, has now reached an unstoppable level. Leader Vladimir Putin had now a much bigger problem to solve. Russia began to devour itself from the inside out, while the effects of the mobilization were spreading rapidly in the country. Civil wars, conflicts, protest demonstrations, and striking actions caused the Moscow administration to gradually lose the ongoing war in Ukraine. If Putin cannot stop these actions against the Moscow regime, these dark days will turn not only Putin's power but also Russia into an Iron Curtain country. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications in order to be informed about new videos. Thank you for watching us.